Once you learn these life lessons, you will never be the same, because the first lesson always arrives like a cold splash of water. For many years, I believed that if you are a good person, if you try hard, life will eventually reward you. I was wrong. Reality does not care about good intentions. It only responds to clear thinking, disciplined action, and the courage to take responsibility when things fail. I remember being rejected again and again, jobs, interviews, opportunities. At first I felt unlucky. I felt life was unfair. But slowly reality taught me something painful and powerful. Effort without direction is noise. Hope without strategy is weakness. Failure is not a punishment. Failure is a mirror. It shows you exactly where your thinking is broken. This lesson hurts because it destroys illusions. Once you see that the world does not owe you anything, you stop waiting to be saved. You stop blaming timing, people, or systems. You realize that excuses feel comforting, but they quietly steal your future. Discipline becomes the bridge between goals and accomplishment, not talent or luck. After this moment, you cannot go back. You start asking different questions. Not why did this happen to me, but what must I change in myself? This shift is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. The world only remembers doers, not talkers. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity, but preparation begins with brutal honesty. This is why this lesson changes you forever. Awareness removes innocence. Responsibility replaces excuses. And once responsibility enters your life, growth becomes unavoidable. Failure becomes a stepping stone, not a stopping point. From this moment on, you are no longer drifting. You are awake. And when you are awake, there is no turning back. Once you learn these life lessons, you will never be the same. Because the second lesson is even more uncomfortable. For a long time, I blamed everything outside myself. I blamed my background. I blamed my English. I blamed the fact that I was rejected so many times. It felt logical. It felt fair. But it was wrong. Slowly, painfully, I discovered the real limit was not money, not opportunity, not even talent. It was how I was thinking. A small mindset creates small results, even with big effort. A narrow mind turns obstacles into walls, while an open mind turns them into doors. This realization is dangerous because it removes your last excuse. I remember failing an exam again and again. Other people moved forward while I stayed behind. At first, I thought I was unlucky. But later, I realized my thinking was focused on what I lacked, not what I could learn. The moment I changed my thinking, my behavior changed. And when behavior changes, outcomes follow. The world does not reward potential, it rewards perspective and action. Most people work hard but think small. That is why they stay stuck. They say, this is enough, or this is realistic, or this is my limit. But realism is often fear wearing a smart mask. When you upgrade your mindset, the same world suddenly offers new paths. Opportunities you could not see before become obvious. This lesson changes you forever because you stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? You take ownership of your thinking. You realize that discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. But mindset decides which goals you even allow yourself to see. Failure becomes a stepping stone, not a verdict. Once you understand this, you cannot unlearn it. You stop waiting for life to change. You change first. And when the mind changes, everything else has no choice but to follow. Once you learn these life lessons, you will never be the same, because comfort is the most dangerous teacher. Comfort whispers, not shouts. It tells you that you are fine, that tomorrow is safer, that there is no need to push today. I have seen many smart people lose their future quietly, not because they were lazy, but because they were comfortable. In my early years, I watched talented friends choose stability over growth. They said they were being practical. They said they needed balance. But comfort has a hidden cost. It slowly lowers your standards. It convinces you to accept less than what you are capable of becoming. Growth always feels uncomfortable at first, and that discomfort is the price of admission. When I faced repeated rejection, comfort offered me an escape. It said, stop trying, find something easier. But I learned that the pain of effort is temporary, while the pain of regret lasts forever. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment, And discipline never lives in comfort. It lives in small, daily decisions that feel inconvenient. Most people are not afraid of failure. They are afraid of discomfort. They prefer the familiar pain of staying the same over the unfamiliar pain of change. But failure is a stepping stone, not a stopping point. Every time you choose discomfort, you strengthen your ability to adapt. And adaptability is what the future rewards. This lesson changes you because it forces a choice. You must decide which pain you are willing to carry. The pain of growth or the pain of stagnation. The world only remembers doers, not talkers. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity, but preparation requires sacrifice. Once you accept discomfort as part of progress, fear loses its control over you. Comfort stops being your goal. Growth becomes it. And from that moment, you begin to move in a direction most people are too comfortable to take. Once you learn these life lessons, you will never be the same, because rejection stops feeling personal. Early in my life, rejection followed me everywhere. I was rejected from jobs, rejected from schools, rejected again and again until it almost felt normal. At first, it hurt deeply. I thought rejection meant I was not good enough. Later, I realized rejection was not an insult. It was information. When KFC came to China, 24 people applied for a job. 23 were accepted. I was the only one rejected. At that moment, I felt embarrassed and small, but that rejection taught me something important. The world is not judging your value. It is testing your fit. Weak minds see rejection as a stop sign. Strong minds see it as a map. Most people let rejection define them. They hear no and translate it into never. That is a dangerous misunderstanding. Rejection is feedback, not a verdict. It tells you what does not work so you can adjust your approach. Failure is a stepping stone, but only if you study where you stepped wrong. I learned to ask a different question after rejection. Not why did this happen to me, but what is this teaching me? This simple shift changes everything. The moment you treat rejection as data, emotions lose their power over your decisions. You stop wasting energy on self-pity and start investing it in improvement. The world only remembers doers, not those who quit quietly after the first refusal. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment, and discipline means showing up even when you are not welcomed. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity, but rejection is what sharpens preparation. Once you understand this lesson, rejection no longer breaks you. It trains you. It hardens your thinking and clarifies your direction. From that point forward, every no pushes you closer to the right yes. And that is why, after learning this lesson, you can never face rejection the same way again. Once you learn these life lessons, you will never be the same, because you stop letting emotions drive the wheel. For a long time, my emotions controlled my decisions. When I was angry, I reacted. When I was afraid, I delayed. When I was jealous, I lost focus. It felt human, but it was expensive. I learned the hard way that emotions are natural, but they are terrible leaders. In the early days of Alibaba, there was chaos everywhere. Money was short. People doubted us. Competitors laughed at us. If I had allowed fear to decide for me, I would have quit many times. If I had allowed anger to decide, I would have made enemies instead of allies. Calm thinking wins in the long run. This is not philosophy. It is survival. Most people think power comes from shouting louder or reacting faster. That is weakness disguised as strength. Real power is the ability to pause, to breathe, to think when everyone else is emotional. Emotional control is not about suppressing feelings. It is about choosing actions. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment, and discipline begins with controlling your inner world. I noticed something very simple over time. The people who panic make mistakes. The people who stay calm see options. When you master your emotions, chaos stops intimidating you. Pressure becomes a tool instead of a threat. Failure becomes feedback instead of a personal attack. The world will test you unfairly. People will misunderstand you. Situations will not go your way. If every emotion controls your next move, you will live a reactive life. But once you learn to respond instead of react, everything changes. You become dangerous in a quiet way. This lesson changes you forever because it gives you leverage, not over others, but over yourself. And when you control yourself, the world feels smaller, slower, and more manageable. That is real power. Once you learn these life lessons, you will never be the same because you stop confusing talking with progress. Early in my life, I noticed something uncomfortable. The people who talked the most were often the ones moving the least. They had reasons for everything, reasons why it wouldn't work, reasons why the timing was bad, reasons why someone else had an advantage. They sounded smart, but their lives stayed the same. When I was trying to build Alibaba, many people explained to me why it was impossible. China is not ready. The internet will never work here. You are too late. They were not stupid people. They were educated, but they were explainers, not builders. Builders look foolish in the beginning. Explainers look intelligent forever and achieve nothing. I learned that explanation is often fear wearing a suit. It feels safe to analyze. It feels responsible to complain. But the world only remembers doers, not talkers. Winners build quietly while others debate loudly. Losers wait for perfect conditions and explain their waiting as wisdom. There were many moments when I could have explained my situation instead of acting. No money, no connections, no technology background, all true. But explanations do not change outcomes. Action does. Failure is a stepping stone, but only if you step forward. If you stand still explaining the stone, you go nowhere. This lesson permanently changed how I use time. I stopped arguing with doubters. I stopped defending my dreams. I started building. Even small progress beats perfect excuses. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity, but preparation only comes from doing. Once you understand this lesson, your life shifts direction. You stop trying to sound right and start trying to move forward. And that is why, once you learn this, you will never be the same. Once you learn these life lessons, you will never be the same because your relationship with failure completely changes. People love to talk about Thomas Edison failing 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. They repeat the number like a joke or a warning. But they miss the real lesson. Edison was not counting failures. He was collecting information. His mindset never questioned whether the light bulb was possible. It only focused on how to make it work. This is where most people break. They fail once, twice, maybe 10 times, and they start questioning themselves. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe this dream is not for me. Edison never did that. Each attempt refined his thinking. Each mistake narrowed the path. Failure is a stepping stone, but only if your mind is disciplined enough to learn from it. Without learning, failure is just pain. When I was rejected from KFC, from universities, from jobs, I could have decided that rejection defined my worth. Many people do. They turn one failure into an identity. But rejection is not a verdict. It is feedback. The world was not telling me to stop. It was telling me to improve. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. And discipline means showing up again after disappointment. Edison teaches us something brutal and honest. Persistence without belief is torture. Persistence with belief becomes destiny. He did not try 1,000 times because he was stubborn. He tried because his mindset was stronger than his emotions. He separated results from self-worth. Once this lesson clicks, failure loses its power over you. You stop fearing mistakes. You stop protecting your ego. You start refining your approach. And that is why, once you truly understand this lesson, you will never be the same person again. Once you learn these life lessons, you will never be the same, especially in how you choose the people and voices around you. Not everyone who smiles at you wants you to grow. Some people are comfortable with your dreams only when those dreams stay small. They may not attack you directly. They joke. They doubt. They normalize fear. Slowly, they make limitations sound like wisdom. I learned this lesson the hard way. In my early days, many people told me I was crazy. They said the internet was a toy, not a business. They said I should find a stable job and stop embarrassing myself. These people were not evil. They were afraid. But fear is contagious. If you listen long enough, their limits become your limits. Their doubts begin to sound like your own thoughts. This is why protecting your mindset is more important than protecting your reputation. People will forgive your success much later, but they will punish your ambition early. Toxic. Thinking does not always come from enemies. Often it comes from friends who are afraid to change. Winners understand this quietly. They do not argue. They simply create distance. The world only remembers doers, not talkers, and doers must think differently. Once you reduce negative voices, your mind becomes clearer. Your confidence grows faster. You stop explaining your dreams to people who do not deserve access to them. This is not arrogance. This is discipline. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity, but preparation requires silence from doubt. Once you cut toxic thinking loops, you begin to hear your own intuition again. That is when momentum starts. That is when your life shifts direction. And once you feel that shift, there is no going back. Once you learn these life lessons, you will never be the same, especially when it comes to action. Most people tell themselves they are waiting for confidence, waiting for clarity, waiting for the perfect moment. I used to believe this lie too. I thought confidence came first and action came later. But life taught me the opposite lesson, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. I was never confident when I started. I did not feel ready. When I applied for jobs, I was rejected again and again. KFC rejected me. Harvard rejected me many times. If I had waited to feel confident, I would still be waiting today. Confidence is not a gift. Confidence is built step by step through movement. Failure is a stepping stone, but only if you keep walking. Most people are not afraid of failure. They are afraid of looking foolish. So they delay. They plan. They prepare forever. They call it intelligence, but it is just fear wearing a smart suit. The world only remembers doers, not talkers. Action, even imperfect action, creates feedback. Feedback creates learning. Learning creates confidence. This is the real order, and it never changes. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. You do not need motivation every day. You need the habit of moving forward, even when your emotions are weak. I learned that courage grows after you act, not before. Each small step proves to your mind that fear is not fatal. Once you understand this lesson, procrastination loses its power. You stop asking, "Am I ready?" and start asking, "What is the next small move?" This changes everything. Fear turns into fuel, doubt turns into data, and slowly, quietly, confidence arrives. Not as a feeling, but as a result. This is why once you learn these life lessons, you will never be the same. You stop waiting for permission, you move, and the future starts moving with you. Once you learn these life lessons, there is no turning back. You cannot unsee the truths you now understand. Comfort begins to feel dangerous, excuses feel weak, and every wasted moment feels like a lost opportunity. Life shows you its patterns, its hidden rules, and suddenly the world that once seemed random becomes a map, and with it comes responsibility. Once awareness hits, you can never return to the naive thinking that allowed stagnation to feel safe. I remember when I first realized this. Every rejection, every failure, every moment I felt the sting of being unprepared taught me a lesson I could never forget. The KFC rejection, the failures with my first internet ideas, each one carved a path into my mind that changed the way I approach challenges. Once you see how the world actually works, you understand that waiting, complaining, and hoping for luck is useless. You realize that effort, mindset, and action are the only currencies that matter. This is why once these lessons sink in, you will never be the same. You begin to see responsibility in everything, in your job, in your relationships, in your dreams. Comfort loses its appeal because you know it comes at the cost of your future. Excuses crumble under the weight of truth. Time becomes sharper, every decision more critical. You start to act differently, think differently, and measure life by results rather than illusions. History is written by those who adjust early, not those who resist until the world forces change upon them. Once you learn these life lessons, you step into a new reality where awareness drives action and discipline fuels every choice. And there is no reverse button. The mind that sees, the heart that persists, and the hands that act, these are forever changed. You cannot go back, because the truth you now hold is unstoppable, and it will carry you forward whether you are ready or not.